Danny Cole wiped the sweat from his forehead and pushed another heavy crate onto the transport belt. His back hurt. His arms were tired. But he kept working because that was what humans did on Nexus Station. They worked hard, they stayed quiet, and they tried not to cause any trouble. The massive space station floated in the darkness between three solar systems. It was a place where aliens from dozens of worlds came to trade goods, make deals, and show off their wealth. Beautiful ships docked at the upper levels, where rich merchants and noble families walked on floors made of crystal. But Danny had never seen those floors. He lived and worked in the lower levels, where the air smelled like oil and the lights flickered every few hours. He was 17 years old with brown hair that was always messy and hands that were always dirty. He had come to Nexus Station 2 years ago, hoping to earn enough money to send back to his mother and little sister on Earth. Humans were still new to the galaxy. Most alien species looked down on them. They called humans primitive, emotional, and weak. Danny had heard all the insults before. He had learned to ignore them. When his shift ended, Danny collected his small payment of credits and walked toward the market district. This was the one place where the upper and lower levels mixed together. Rich aliens shopped for expensive goods while poor workers passed through on their way home. Danny liked to walk slowly through the market. He enjoyed looking at all the strange foods and colorful fabrics, even though he could not afford any of them. Today, the market was more crowded than usual. A group of nobles had arrived on the station. There were tall reptilian creatures with green scales and proud eyes. They were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, and they never let anyone forget it. The nobles wore golden armor and walked through the crowd like they owned everything. Other aliens moved out of their way quickly. Danny kept his head down and tried to find a path through the crowd. That was when he saw her. Near a waste disposal unit away from the busy walkways, an old woman sat on the cold metal floor. She wore dirty rags that covered most of her body. A torn hood hid her face. She was thin, so thin that Danny could see her bones through her gray skin. Her hands shook as she held them out, begging for food or credits. But everyone walked past her. No one even looked at her. Danny stopped walking. He watched as dozens of aliens passed the old woman without a glance. Some of them stepped over her like she was garbage. One merchant actually kicked dirt at her as he walked by. Something inside Danny's chest felt tight. He thought about his grandmother back on Earth, who had died poor and alone while his family struggled to help her. He thought about all the times people had walked past him without caring. He knew what it felt like to be invisible. Danny only had one meal ration left for the day. It was a small packet of protein paste and dried vegetables. It was not much, but it was all he had until tomorrow. He looked at the packet in his hand. Then he looked at the old woman. He did not think about it for long. He walked over to her and kneeled down on the dirty floor. "Here," he said softly, holding out the meal packet. "Please take this. You need it more than I do." The old woman looked up. Danny could not see her face clearly under the hood, but he noticed her eyes. They were strange eyes, pale silver like moonlight. They studied him carefully as if she was trying to understand something. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was rough and weak. "Why would you give your food to me?" Danny shrugged. "Because you are hungry, and because it is the right thing to do." He took off his jacket, the only warm piece of clothing he owned, and wrapped it around her thin shoulders. The air in the lower levels was cold, and he knew she must be freezing. That was when the laughter started. Danny turned around and saw the group of nobles standing behind him. Their leader was a tall commander with dark green scales and a scar across his face. His name was, and his golden armor shined under the market lights. He was laughing loudly, and his soldiers laughed with him. "Look at this," Commander said, pointing at Danny. "A human giving away his food to a worthless beggar. This is the funniest thing I have seen all year." The other aliens in the market stopped to watch. Some of them started laughing too. "Humans truly are the creatures in the galaxy," continued. "They waste their resources on garbage. They have no understanding of strength or power. This is why they will always be servants and nothing more. Danny stood up slowly. His face was hot with embarrassment, but he kept his voice calm. She is not garbage. She is a person. She deserves to eat just like anyone else. This made laugh even harder. A person, look at her, she is nothing, she has nothing. In the natural order of the universe, the weak exist only to be forgotten. This is the law of survival. Your foolish human emotions blind you to this truth. Maybe, Danny said quietly. But where I come from, we believe that how you treat the weakest people shows who you really are. The crowd went silent for a moment. Commander's smile faded. His eyes turned cold and dangerous. Brave words from a cargo rat, he said. Remember them when you are dying alone in the darkness of space, because that is where your kind belongs. He turned and walked away, and his soldiers followed. The crowd slowly went back to their business, but many of them were still whispering and pointing at Danny. Some called him a fool. Others called him worse things. Danny did not care. He turned back to the old woman and helped her stand up. Can you walk? He asked. I know a place where you can rest. It is not much, but it is warm and safe. The old woman looked at him for a long moment. Those silver eyes seemed to see right through him, deep into his heart. Then she nodded slowly. Yes, she whispered. I can walk. Thank you, young human. Thank you for your kindness. Danny smiled and helped her move through the crowd. People stepped away from them like they were diseased, but Danny did not care about that either. He had done the right thing. That was all that mattered. He did not know that this simple act of kindness would change his life forever. He did not know that the old woman he was helping was not what she seemed. And he did not know that the entire galaxy was about to learn what humanity was truly made of. But all of that was still to come. For now, Danny just walked slowly through the cold metal hallways, helping a stranger who needed help, because that was the kind of person he was. Danny's room was small. It was just a metal box with a thin sleeping mat, a broken heating unit, and a single light that buzzed all the time. But it was his, and for now, it was warm enough. He helped the old woman sit down on his sleeping mat. She moved slowly, like every part of her body was tired. Danny gave her his water bottle and watched as she drank slowly. When she finished, she looked around the tiny room with those strange silver eyes. You live here alone? She asked. Danny nodded. Yes, most of the other workers share rooms to save money, but I like having my own space, even if it is small. It is clean, the old woman said, and it feels safe. You have made it a home. Danny smiled a little. No one had ever said anything nice about his room before. Most people just felt sorry for him when they saw where he lived. I am called, the old woman said. I should have told you my name earlier. I apologize. I am Danny, Danny Cole. He sat down on the floor across from her. Are you from this station? I have not seen you in the lower levels before. Shook her head slowly. No, I am from very far away. I have been traveling for many months. I wanted to see the galaxy to understand how people truly live, but my journey has been difficult. I lost everything along the way. Danny felt sad for her. He could not imagine being old and alone, traveling through space with nothing. Well, you can stay here as long as you need, he said. I do not have much, but I can share what I have. Tilted her head. You are very trusting. You do not know me. I could be dangerous. I could be a criminal. Danny laughed softly. Are you dangerous? Perhaps, said, and there was something strange in her voice, almost like she was joking, but not quite. You should be more careful, young human. The galaxy is full of creatures who would take advantage of your kindness. Maybe, Danny agreed. But if I stopped being kind because some people are bad, what would that make me? I would rather be fooled sometimes than become cold and hard like everyone else on this station. Was quiet for a long moment. She studied Danny's face like she was reading a book written in a language she had almost forgotten. Tell me about your people, she said finally. Tell me about humans. Danny was surprised by the question. Usually, aliens did not want to know about humans. They just wanted to laugh at them or ignore them, but seemed genuinely curious. "We are nothing special," Danny said. "We come from a small blue planet called Earth. We have only been traveling in space for about 100 years. Compared to species like thee or the, we are like bobbies. We are still learning." "But what do you believe?" pressed. "What values do your people hold?" Danny thought carefully before answering. "We believe that every person has value. It does not matter if you are rich or poor, strong or weak. You deserve to be treated with respect. We believe in helping each other, especially when times are hard. We believe that kindness is a strength, not a weakness. Even when others mock you for it." Danny remembered the laughter in the market. He remembered Commander's cruel words. "Yes," he said firmly, "even then, maybe especially then, anyone can be kind when it is easy. The real test is being kind when it costs you something." Leaned back against the wall, she seemed tired but also peaceful. "Your people sound remarkable," she said quietly. "I have traveled to many worlds. I have met many species, but I have never heard anyone speak the way you do." "We are not perfect," Danny admitted. "Humans have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. Wars, cruelty, hatred. But we are trying to be better. Every generation, we try to be a little better than the one before." "That is more than most species can say," replied. Over the next several days, Danny took care of as best as he could. He worked his long shifts in the cargo bay, then came home with extra food he had managed to save or trade for. He fixed the heating unit so the room would be warmer. He found an old blanket that someone had thrown away and cleaned it for her. Grew a little stronger each day. She ate the food Danny brought and rested on his sleeping mat while he slept on the cold floor. She asked him many questions about Earth, about human history, about their art and music and stories. Danny answered everything as best as he could. But Danny also noticed strange things about. Sometimes, when she thought he was not looking, she would speak in languages he did not recognize. Her voice would change, becoming strong and clear instead of rough and weak. She seemed to know things about galactic politics that no ordinary beggar would know. Once, Danny mentioned a trade dispute between two alien nations and explained the whole situation in perfect detail, including facts that were supposed to be secret. Danny did not ask about these things. If wanted to tell him her secrets, she would. He was not going to push. But his life outside the room was getting harder. Word had spread about the human who helped the beggar. Commander made sure everyone knew about it. Danny was mocked everywhere he went. People spat at his feet. His supervisor at the cargo bay threatened to fire him for bringing shame to the company. "You are making trouble for yourself," his supervisor said. "Get rid of the old woman. She is not worth your job." "She is a person," Danny replied. "I am not going to throw her out like garbage." The supervisor shook his head in disgust. "Stupid human. You will learn eventually, or you will suffer. That is how the universe works." That night Danny came home more tired than usual. His body hurt from the heavy work. His heart hurt from all the cruel words. But when he opened the door and saw sitting there, waiting for him with a gentle smile, he felt better. "You had a difficult day," said. "It was not a question." Danny sat down on the floor and sighed. "People are angry at me for helping you. They think I am weak and foolish." "Do you think you are weak and foolish?" Danny considered the question seriously. "No," he said finally. "I think I am doing what my mother taught me to do. She always said that the world becomes better one small act at a time. Maybe I cannot change the whole galaxy, but I can help one person, and that matters." Reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She is," Danny said. "I hope I can see her again someday." "You will," said, and there was a certainty in her voice that Danny did not understand. "I promise you, young Danny, you will see her again, and she will be very proud of who you have become." Danny did not know why, but those words made his eyes sting with tears. He blinked them away quickly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for saying that." Smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and warm at the same time. "No, Danny," she said softly. "Thank you. You have no idea what your kindness means. But one day soon you will understand. One day the whole galaxy will understand." Danny did not know what she meant, but he was too tired to ask. He lay down on the cold floor, pulled his thin blanket over himself, and fell into a deep sleep. He dreamed of Earth, of green fields and blue skies, of his mother's warm kitchen and his sister's laughter. He dreamed of home. And somewhere in the darkness of the station, plans were being made that would change everything. The central plaza of Nexus Station was filled with important aliens from across the galaxy. Flags of 100 worlds hung from the high ceiling. Screens showed news broadcasts in dozens of languages. Security officers stood at every corner, watching the crowds with careful eyes. Danny knew something big was happening, but he did not know what. He kept his head down and tried to walk through the plaza quickly. He had finished his shift and wanted to get home too, but the crowds were thick and movement was slow. He heard fragments of conversation as he pushed through the mass of bodies. Words like treaty and council vote and classification of species floated through the air. A group of merchants discussed something about primitive worlds losing their rights. A pair of diplomats argued about the sovereignty and their missing queen. Danny did not care about politics. He just wanted to go home. But fate had other plans. "There he is." The shout came from behind him. Danny turned and saw Commander pushing through the crowd, followed by a squad of soldiers. The commander's yellow eyes were burning with anger and something else, something that looked like cruel satisfaction. "Humans, stop where you are," commanded. Danny's heart started beating faster. He had done nothing wrong, but he knew that did not matter to someone like. He thought about running, but there were too many people around. He would never make it. The soldiers surrounded him in seconds. Rough hands grabbed his arms and forced him to his knees. The crowd around them stopped and stared. Some aliens whispered to each other. Others took out recording devices to capture the scene. "What is happening?" Danny asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "What did I do?" Commander smiled. It was a cold, terrible smile. "You have been accused of theft, human. A valuable artifact was stolen from a merchant 2 days ago. We have evidence that you are the thief." "That is a lie," Danny shouted. "I have never stolen anything in my life." "The evidence says otherwise," replied smoothly. He held up a small device and pressed a button. A holographic image appeared, showing a blurry figure entering a storage room. The figure was wearing clothes similar to Danny's work uniform. "This recording places you at the scene of the crime. The artifact was found hidden in the lower levels, near your living quarters." Danny felt the ground drop out from under him. He understood now. This was not about any stolen artifact. This was revenge. Had been planning this ever since that day in the market. He had manufactured evidence to destroy Danny's life. "This is not real," Danny said desperately. "Someone set me up. I did not do this." "That is what all criminals say," said with a wave of his hand. "Take him to the holding cells. He will face judgment tomorrow." The soldiers dragged Danny to his feet. He struggled, but they were too strong. Aliens in the crowd looked away. Some of them shook their heads in disappointment, already believing that Danny was guilty. Others just did not care. But then Danny saw something that made his struggling stop. Near the edge of the crowd, almost hidden in the shadows, was watching. Her silver eyes were fixed on him. Her face showed no expression, but something in her posture had changed. She stood. She seemed taller somehow. Danny wanted to call out to her, to warn her to run before found her too. But before he could say anything, the soldiers pulled him away and marched him toward the detention center. The holding cell was cold and dark. Danny sat on the hard metal floor with his back against the wall. His wrists were bound with energy restraints that cut into his skin whenever he moved. A small window in the door let in a sliver of light from the hallway outside. He had been there for hours. No one had come to talk to him. No one had offered him food or water. He was alone with his thoughts and his fear. Danny thought about his mother and sister back on Earth. They had no idea what was happening to him. They would wait for his messages, wait for the credits he sent home every month, and eventually they would realize that he was gone. The thought of their sadness hurt more than anything else. He thought about, too. He hoped she had escaped before anyone connected her to him. He hoped she had found somewhere safe to hide. At least some good had come from his kindness. He had helped one person. That was worth something. The door to his cell opened. Commander stepped inside, his golden armor catching the dim light. He looked down at Danny with contempt in his eyes. "Tomorrow you will be sentenced," said. "The punishment for theft of property is exile into deep space. You will be placed in a transport pod with no navigation system and launched into the void. You will drift until your air runs out or your food is gone. It is a slow death, but a fitting one for a thief." Danny looked up at him. His voice was surprisingly calm. "You know I did not steal anything. You planted that evidence." Laughed softly. "Perhaps, but who will believe you? You are just a human, a cargo worker from a primitive planet. Your word means nothing against mine." "Is this because I helped the old woman?" Danny asked. "Is this all because I showed kindness to someone in need?" The commander's smile faded. His eyes turned hard. "It is because you embarrassed me. You made me look foolish in front of my soldiers and the public. No human does that and survives. This is the lesson that your entire pathetic species needs to learn. The weak do not challenge the strong. The inferior do not lecture the superior." Danny shook his head slowly. "You think cruelty makes you strong, but it does not. It just makes you empty inside. One day you will understand that. One day you will look back and realize that you destroyed innocent lives for nothing." Stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been doubt or anger or both. Then he turned and walked toward the door. "Enjoy your last night alive, human," he said over his shoulder. "Tomorrow you die." The door slammed shut. Danny was alone again. He closed his eyes and tried to think of happy memories. He thought of summer days on Earth, playing with his sister in the garden behind their house. He thought of his mother's voice, singing old songs while she cooked dinner. He thought of starry nights, lying on the grass and dreaming about the universe. He had always wanted to see the stars. He had always wanted to explore the galaxy and meet new species and have adventures. He had gotten his wish, in a way, but not like this. Not like this. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He did not try to stop them. He was allowed to cry. He was allowed to be afraid. But even now, even facing death, he did not regret what he had done. He had helped someone who needed help. He had shown kindness when others showed cruelty. That was who he was. That was who he would always be, no matter what happened. The night passed slowly in the cold darkness of the cell. Danny drifted in and out of sleep, his dreams mixing with his fears. He dreamed of his mother reaching out to him, calling his name. He dreamed of silver eyes watching him from the shadows. He dreamed of stars burning out one by one until only darkness remained. When morning came, the soldiers returned. They unlocked his cell and dragged him out into the hallway. Other prisoners watched through their cell windows as he was led toward the transport bay. This was it. This was the end. But Danny held his head high as he walked. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him broken. He would face his death the way he had faced his life, with dignity and courage and hope. And somewhere in the great council chamber above, events were already in motion that would change everything. The transport bay was filled with officials and curious onlookers. Word had spread that a human thief was being exiled, and many aliens had come to watch. Some wanted to see justice done. Others just wanted entertainment. Commander stood near the exile pod, his arms crossed and a satisfied smile on his face. Danny was led through the crowd in chains. His body was tired and his heart was heavy, but his eyes were clear. He looked at the faces around him, searching for any sign of sympathy. He found none. To them, he was already dead. The exile pod waited at the end of the bay. It was a small, ugly thing, barely large enough for one person. No windows, no controls, just a metal box that would carry him into the endless darkness of space. Once the door closed, he would never open it again. As the soldiers pushed him forward, Danny caught sight of the viewing gallery above the bay. The gallery was filled with important aliens, diplomats and merchants and council members who had gathered to witness the execution. Among them, he saw several nobles laughing and pointing at him. This was how it ended, not with heroism or glory, but with mockery and loneliness. Danny took a deep breath and prepared himself for the final walk. Then the main doors of the transport bay burst open. Everyone turned to look. Even Commander stopped smiling and stared at the entrance with confusion in his eyes. A woman walked through the doors. She moved slowly with perfect grace, like every step was exactly planned. She wore robes of shimmering silver and white, decorated with symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. Her face was calm and beautiful, with high cheekbones and pale skin that seemed almost luminous. Her hair was long and silver, flowing behind her like liquid moonlight. But it was her eyes that made Danny's heart stop. Silver eyes, pale as moonlight, the same eyes he had seen under a beggar's hood in a crowded market. The woman was, and yet she was not. She was something more, something greater. The crowd fell completely silent. Then, one by one, the aliens began to kneel. First the ones near the door, then the ones in the middle of the bay, then even the soldiers holding Danny's chains. They dropped to their knees and bowed their heads, their faces showing shock and fear and reverence. Commander's green scales had turned pale. His yellow eyes were wide with disbelief. "It cannot be," he whispered. "You are dead. You disappeared months ago." The woman stopped walking. She was standing in the center of the bay now, surrounded by kneeling aliens. Only Danny and were still on their feet. Danny because no one was holding him anymore, because his legs seemed frozen in place. "I am queen of the sovereignty," the woman said. Her voice filled the entire bay, clear and powerful like a bell ringing in the silence. "I am the ruler of the oldest civilization in the known galaxy, and I have returned to deliver judgment." Danny felt like he was dreaming. The frail old beggar he had helped, the woman he had shared his food with and given his jacket to, was the most powerful being in the galaxy. The queen that everyone had been searching for. The leader whose word was law across 1,000 star systems. Turned to look at Danny. Her silver eyes were warm and gentle, so different from the cold authority she showed everyone else. "Release him," she commanded. "Now." No one moved at first. They were too shocked. Then a soldier scrambled forward and quickly removed Danny's chains. He stood there rubbing his wrists, unable to speak. The queen turned back to face Commander. Her warmth disappeared. Her eyes became cold as distant stars. "I left my throne to travel among the common people," she said. "I wanted to see the true nature of the galactic community. I wanted to understand how the powerful treat the powerless when no one important is watching." She began to walk toward. With each step the commander seemed to shrink, his proud posture crumbling. "I walked through your markets in rags," continued. "I begged for food in your streets. I watched as hundreds of aliens passed me by without a glance. I watched as the wealthy kicked dirt at me and the merchants spat at my feet. I saw greed and cruelty and indifference everywhere I looked." She stopped directly in front of. Even though she was shorter than him, she seemed to tower over the trembling commander. "And then," she said softly, "one person stopped. One person kneeled in the dirt beside me and shared his only meal. One person gave me his jacket, the only warm thing he owned, because he could not stand to see another being suffer." She gestured toward Danny. "A human boy, a cargo worker, a member of what you call a primitive species. He showed me more kindness in 5 minutes than I received from the entire civilized galaxy in 5 months." Commander fell to his knees. His golden armor clanked against the metal floor. "Your Majesty, I did not know, I could not have known. Please, I beg for mercy." "You mocked him," said, and her voice was like ice. "You laughed at his compassion. You called humans weak and foolish. And when mockery was not enough, you framed him for a crime he did not commit. You were going to murder an innocent boy because he embarrassed you." She looked around the bay at all the kneeling aliens. "I came here to decide whether to sign the treaty that would classify certain species as inferior. The Empire was the strongest supporter of this treaty. They argued that some species are simply lesser, that they do not deserve the same rights as others." Her voice rose, filling every corner of the bay. "But I have seen the truth. The species you call primitive showed me humanity. The species you call advanced showed me cruelty. You are not superior. You are not enlightened. You are small and petty and blind." She raised her hand, and suddenly the bay was filled with soldiers in silver armor. They had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the guards. Warriors, the most elite fighting force in the galaxy. "Commander, you are under arrest for conspiracy, false imprisonment, and attempted murder," announced. "You will be taken to Prime to face trial. Your rank is stripped, your honors are revoked, and the treaty you championed will never be signed." Opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. Two silver soldiers lifted him by his arms and dragged him away. He looked back at Danny as he was pulled through the doors, his yellow eyes filled with hatred and disbelief. Then he was gone. The Queen turned to Danny. The coldness melted from her face, replaced by the gentle warmth he remembered from their days together in his tiny room. "Danny Cole," she said, "you showed kindness to a stranger without expecting anything in return. You stood by your values even when others mocked you. You faced death without abandoning who you are. These are the marks of true nobility." She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was warm now, not cold like before. "I cannot give you back the days you suffered, but I can give you something else. I can give you justice. I can give you recognition. And I can give humanity its rightful place among the stars." Danny finally found his voice. It came out rough and shaky, but honest. "I did not do it for a reward. I just did what anyone should do." Smiled. It was a beautiful smile, full of wisdom and sadness and hope. "And that," she said, "is exactly why your kind is extraordinary. You do not see kindness as a transaction. You see it as a duty. You see it as part of being human." She turned to address the watching crowd. "Let this day be remembered. Let it be known across the galaxy that a human boy taught the mightiest civilizations a lesson they had forgotten. The measure of a species is not their technology or their power. It is how they treat those who cannot help them." The crowd was silent, but it was a different kind of silence now, not the silence of mockery or indifference, the silence of listening, the silence of learning. Danny looked at the Queen, the beggar, the woman who had changed everything. He still could not quite believe it was real. "What happens now?" he asked. Squeezed his hand. "Now," she said, "the galaxy begins to change, and you, Danny Cole, will help lead the way. 1 year had passed since the day in the transport bay. 1 year since a beggar revealed herself to be a queen. 1 year since everything changed." Danny stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic ship, watching as Earth grew larger in the blue planet hung in the darkness like a precious jewel, beautiful and fragile and full of life. He had dreamed of this moment for so long. Now it was finally here. He was wearing the formal uniform of a cultural ambassador, deep blue with silver trim. It felt strange on his body, so different from the dirty work clothes he had worn on Nexus Station. Sometimes he still could not believe this was his life now. The door behind him opened and Queen walked in. She was dressed in simple robes today, without the heavy ceremonial garments she wore for official events. Her silver hair was tied back, and her pale eyes sparkled with warmth. "We will arrive in 3 hours," she said, standing beside him. "Your family has been, they are waiting for you." Danny felt his throat tighten. "I have not seen them in almost 3 years. I missed my sister's birthday. I missed so many things." "But you are returning to them now," said gently. "And you are returning as a hero. Your mother will understand." Danny shook his head slowly. "I am not a hero. I just did what felt right." "That is what all true heroes say." The Queen smiled. "Do you know what has happened since that day on Nexus Station? The story of the human boy and the beggar queen has spread to every corner of the galaxy. Children on 1,000 worlds are learning about you in their schools. Leaders are debating whether their societies have lost sight of basic kindness." Danny had heard about this, but it still felt unreal. He was just Danny Cole. He was just a cargo worker who had shared his meal with a hungry stranger. How could that simple act have changed so much? "The treaty was destroyed," continued. "The movement to classify species as inferior has collapsed. Humanity has been formally recognized as a full member of the Galactic Council, with all the rights and privileges that come with that status. Your planet is receiving technology and resources that will help your people prosper for generations." "That is not because of me," Danny said. "That is because of you. You are the one with the power to make those changes." Turned to face him directly. Her silver eyes were serious. "I have lived for 3,000 years, Danny. I have ruled an empire that spans 100 star systems. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have met billions of beings from countless species. And in all that time, do you know what I have learned?" Danny shook his head. "Power means nothing without purpose," the Queen said. "Authority means nothing without wisdom. I have the power to change laws and move armies, but power alone does not make me good. It does not make my decisions right." She paused. "You reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. You reminded me why kindness matters, why compassion is not weakness, why the smallest acts of humanity can be more important than the greatest displays of force." She reached out and touched his shoulder. "You gave me back my faith in the universe, Danny Cole. That is why I call you a hero, not because you changed the galaxy, but because you changed me." Danny did not know what to say. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had pushed cargo crates and shared food with strangers. They did not look like the hands of someone important. "What do I do now?" he asked quietly. "I do not know how to be an ambassador. I do not know how to give speeches or negotiate treaties. I am just a boy from a small town on Earth." "You do what you have always done," replied. "You treat every person you meet with dignity. You listen to their stories. You help when you can. You stay true to who you are." She smiled. "The galaxy does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be human." 3 hours later, the diplomatic ship landed at a spaceport outside the city where Danny had grown up. A crowd had gathered to welcome them, thousands of people waving flags and holding signs. But Danny was not looking at the crowd. He was looking at 2 figures standing at the front of the platform. His mother was older than he remembered. Her hair had more gray in it now. Her face had more lines, but her eyes were the same, warm and brown and full of love. Beside her stood his little sister, who was not so little anymore. She had grown several inches and her face had changed, becoming more mature. But her smile was still the same bright, joyful smile he remembered from his childhood. Danny walked down the ramp slowly. The crowd fell silent, watching. Every step felt like a dream. Then his mother broke free from the platform and ran toward him, her arms open wide. They collided in the middle of the walkway. His mother's arms wrapped around him so tightly he could barely breathe. She was crying, her tears soaking into his fancy uniform. His sister joined them a moment later, squeezing into the hug, laughing and crying at the same time. "My boy," his mother whispered. "My beautiful, wonderful boy, you came home." Danny held them tight. He was crying too, and he did not care who saw. "I missed you so much," he said. "Every day, every single day." They stood there for a long time, just holding each other. The crowd watched in respectful silence. Even the reporters and officials kept their distance. This was a private moment, and everyone understood. Finally, Danny pulled back and looked at his mother's face. "I am sorry I was gone so long. I am sorry I could not come back sooner." His mother shook her head, her eyes still glistening. "You never need to apologize. I always knew you would make me proud. I just did not know how much." She looked over Danny's shoulder at Queen, who was standing at the bottom of the ramp, watching with a gentle smile. His mother's eyes widened with awe, but she did not bow or show fear. She just nodded respectfully. "Thank you," she said to the Queen. "Thank you for protecting my son, and thank you for seeing what I have always seen in him." Bowed her head in return. "It is I who should thank you, Mrs. Cole. You raised a remarkable young man. The values you taught him have touched the entire galaxy. The universe needs more mothers like you." Danny's mother laughed, a surprised and slightly embarrassed sound. "I did not do anything special. I just taught him to be kind." "Yes," said, "and look what kindness has accomplished." Later that evening, Danny sat on the porch of his childhood home, watching the stars come out one by one. His mother had made his favorite meal, and his stomach was full for the first time in what felt like years. His sister had fallen asleep on the couch inside, exhausted from all the excitement. The door opened, and his mother came out to join him. She sat down in the chair next to his and looked up at the sky. "I used to watch you sit here when you were little," she said. "You would stare at the stars for hours. You always wanted to know what was out there." "Now I know," Danny said. "There are wonders out there, amazing things beyond imagination. But there is also cruelty and injustice. The galaxy is not so different from Earth, really. Just bigger." "And what are you going to do about it?" Danny considered the question. He thought about all the work ahead of him, the speeches he would have to give, the meetings he would have to attend, the difficult conversations and complicated politics and endless challenges. "I am going to do what you taught me," he said finally. "I am going to treat people with kindness. I am going to help where I can. I am going to remember that everyone, no matter how powerful or powerless, deserves dignity." His mother reached over and took his hand. Her grip was warm and familiar. "That is all I ever wanted for you, not fame or power or wealth, just for you to be a good person." "I will try," Danny said. "Every day I will try." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, ships were traveling between worlds. Civilizations were rising and falling. Beings of every shape and size were living their lives, making choices, hopping for better days. And on a small blue planet, in a quiet town, a mother and son held hands and looked up at the universe they were both a part of. Danny smiled. He was home. He was loved. And tomorrow he would wake up and try again to make the galaxy a little kinder than it was before. That was enough. That had always been enough. Kindness had started everything, and kindness would carry it forward, one small act at a time, until the stars themselves grew old and the universe began anew.